Welcome to the Virulent Vortex, a podcast in which we discuss infectious diseases across scales, from pathogens and molecules to populations, pandemics, and everything in between. My name is Jaap de Rode. I'm a professor of biology here at Emory University, and today with me is Steven Mugel. Steven is a graduate student in the Environmental Health Sciences program here at the Rowan School of Public Health. Steven, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
A lot of your research focuses on understanding the drivers of child health or child morbidity. Can you talk a little bit about what you do?
Absolutely. So I work on exploring global patterns of the distribution of environmental determinants of infectious disease. Mm-hmm. When we look at some of the top contributors to child mortality and morbidity globally, we see that most of them are infectious diseases.
Okay.
Amongst the top 5 are 3 big ones: diarrheal diseases, malaria, and lower respiratory infections. All 3 of these can be linked pretty closely to the household environment. And so what I focus on is understanding how, where, and among whom deprivations in household environmental conditions may be linked to clustered child health outcomes. So the 5 dimensions of household environmental health that I'm most interested in include water, sanitation, and hygiene, which collectively have been known as WASH. These 3 environmental interventions have been focused on primarily amongst environmental health scientists as ways that we can intervene and protect child health through preventing diarrhea, through preventing microbial infections that can cause diarrhea, as well as other chronic infections which can lead to child growth deficiencies. But I'm also interested in household air pollution, which is primarily driven by the choice of household cooking fuel, whether this is something like wood or charcoal or agricultural byproducts. Those produce a lot of particulate matter and other air pollutants, which can be linked to acute respiratory infections. Alternatively, folks can use cleaner burning fuels such as gas or electricity would be great. And then the final dimension is the household use and ownership of bed nets. Which are one of the primary ways which we prevent malaria globally.
Right. Okay. So in terms of the cooking fuels, this is really interesting because a lot of us, living in places such as Atlanta, we either have gas or electricity. We tend not to think of the fact that a lot of people around the globe still use open fires for cooking. And so what you're saying is that a lot of that way of cooking can create a lot of pollutants inside the home. And so how is that related to infectious disease?
Yeah, so it's thought that a lot of this chronic exposure to air pollutants can lead to potentially weaker immune systems. Folks are really looking into this mechanism a little bit more, and but that's one of the primary ways that people are thinking. Yeah, so one of the ways that we think that household air pollution may be linked with infectious disease is through chronic exposure to these air pollutants may weaken immune systems or weaken lung function, which can then be linked to the establishment of an infection once exposure to a microbial pathogen occurs. Another potential mechanism is simply that those microbial airborne pathogens can linger further on some of the solid substrates.
And so looking at these 5 factors, where are the differences? What are you finding? Is every household in a particular country the same? Are there differences between regions, between cities, between whole countries?
We see that as one might expect, a lot of urban areas have a lot more of this infrastructure. It's much easier to establish, say, piped water than in an urban area than it is to administer that throughout a broader rural population. Unfortunately, most countries in sub-Saharan Africa are predominantly in rural areas. Some of the largest populations are in rural areas. So we see that there are, unfortunately, a lot of deprivations throughout the region. Interestingly, water has been one of the main focuses of global development, understandably. It's linked to not only to child health, but health amongst adults and dignity, gender equality, all kinds of great metrics that the UN Sustainable Development Goals focus on. So administering clean water is one of the deprivations that we see at the lowest level across all countries. One of the highest is still using biomass cooking fuels.
We often think about drugs, medicines, and vaccines. But you're saying that a lot can be gained from the infrastructure at the household level or within a city.
Absolutely. Household and community levels are great ways that we can start to intervene to protect people from exposure to those pathogens in the first place.
Yeah.
Better distribution of treatment and healthcare centers is fantastic. We absolutely need to be focusing there, but I don't think that should leave out thinking about environments. And a lot of people globally agree with that.
Yeah. So really taking the holistic approach. It's not one or the other, but it's a whole combination of all of these things together.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I think about, is that holistic or integrative perspective on how we can bring together some of these folks from different fields who focus on the same general thing, have some different expertise, but perhaps we can think about ways that we can co-locate or synergize these interventions within the populations and the households that need them most.
Yeah, wonderful. And so you talk about child morbidity. We're not just talking about mortality, right? So often we think of infectious diseases. We ask, what is the chance of it killing someone who is infected? But you're saying actually there's a lot more to infectious disease than the chance of being killed by the pathogen.
Absolutely. There's a concept called the disability adjusted life years, which is a metric used to quantify the effects of a pathogen or disease or even a risk factor, used by the Lancet Global Burden of Disease study. And they essentially look at the number of years of life that are lost due to either the infection outright causing mortality, or through inducing a longer lasting morbidity or some various sequelae. For example, this is something that we see especially in older populations, but an infectious disease can leave folks without work for a longer period of time. We certainly saw this in COVID, and certainly with COVID-19, we see a lot of longer term sequelae happening, right? So I think that's a great example of how an infectious disease can linger with us for a longer period of time, potentially impacting household finances, which can have downstream effects on health and general well-being.
Yeah, and I guess there is schooling as well. If a child is sick, they cannot go to school, and that can have really long-term consequences. Well, Stephen, it was wonderful talking to you today and learning about your research. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for watching.